I'm going to wait 1 more minute to start.
Okay.
I know Nina's not going to be here, but
I'm gonna clean up my desktop.
uh,
Woody, have there been any capital budget, anything, any meetings with them? I haven't seen anything,
no,
but
I just sent an email to Barry today that I copied you on.
yeah, I saw that email, but
That-
yeah.
because I haven't heard anything.
Okay. If
Just
you
want,
hear of a meeting that I'm supposed to be at, will you give me a heads up,
yeah,
just in case I miss
I'll
it.
let you know.
I can
Okay.
give you an update if you want.
All right, we may ask you for that in just a minute. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and start. Let's just do a quick roll. Kevin,
Yes, here.
Dick,
Here.
Simone,
Here.
Marty,
Here.
Mish,
Here.
and Gavin,
Here.
and I'm here. Great. So first order is the minutes. Mish distributed them. We haven't gotten any comments back, so I am hoping that means that nobody had significant objections or corrections.
No, look good.
Okay, if not, can I have a motion to accept the minutes?
I'll move to accept the minutes.
Great. And a second.
I second.
Kevin,
Yes.
Dick,
Yes.
Simone,
I wasn't there, so I don't think that I should.
right. Marty,
Yes.
Mish,
Yes.
Gavin,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Great. Okay, we had a few things that I wanted to go through this evening. And what I primarily want to do is go through what the activities of the two working groups, and then either in the context of that or afterwards, just have a quick report from the liaisons about things that have been happening, and then hopefully we'll let you go so you can fall asleep during the American Revolution. Okay, so why don't we start with let's start with the Blue Book and do. Mish, could you just talk a little bit about what the committee has been doing and what the kind of next steps are going to be?
Sure. Sorry. And I may need your help with this. So we met we met last week, November 13th, and oh no, that was the police one. Sorry, I'm mixing up my two groups. I'm sorry. We met a while ago, and we've been working on the template for the new book, trying to make it so that it's more uniform in style, so that then when it comes to the scramble to generate to work the content into the actual publishable copy, we have it's much more plug and play. It's easier to just upload and move on. We talked about not having a printed copy, and the town administrators felt strongly that if we could get the printing cost low enough, we should actually maintain a printed copy, because they felt it was important as a sort of as a value that the town provides its citizens. So they felt it sort of as an important town a piece of content that we provide, and so they did not want us to consider going simply totally digital quite yet. And so we have a good process. We have a good calendar now, and a good calendar for having this workload be done in more reasonable amount of time so that people aren't crushed at the end, in April. And we're starting to reach out to people that contribute letters, to sort of have those could be done early. Woody's been looking at the content of the warrant committee letter and what kind of information that's more meaningful we can put in there that would help sort of give context and an overview to the overall warrant. And so that's and we'll be meeting next week. No, the week after Thanksgiving to talk about more specifically the content from the warrant committee's report and what else we can prepare early. Does that seem right, Woody?
I think so. I think we spent a modest amount of time talking about what role that Blue Book might play as an informational document for town residents, not just in terms of our recommendations about specific articles, but also in terms of town finances and kind of where how the budget is changing over time and where money is spent and where it's generated. So historically, there's a warrant committee report and a capital budget committee report that precede the articles in the Blue Book. I came to this a little bit late last time and tried to smooth, if you will, at least the warrant committee report. I did a little rewriting of the capital budget report, but didn't have enough time to rewrite the whole thing, and it really needed to be completely rewritten. So what we're trying to do now is spend some time thinking about how the warrant committee report could be more useful to town residents, rather than just a few dense paragraphs with a lot of numbers in them. Trying to think more carefully about how data gets displayed, the use of graphs and figures and tables to inform people about what the budget is, how the budget's constructed, where what's happening to property tax revenue over time and to other revenue, those kinds of things. In that, hopefully, we'll be aided by Chris Costello and his new assistant Suzanne Hilt, who's got a background in communications. So our hope is to make the warrant committee report a much more visually informative document, and use it as a way of giving people more background as they start to think about how they're going to vote on different articles. Comments, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I personally, from having looked at the Blue Book, well, I've gone to town meetings probably only for the last decade or so. I must admit, I always find it a bit confusing to have the context in order to say, is this a good budget? Is it a bad budget? What are the long-term trends? How do we compare against other towns? So trying to make a more cohesive beginning section that kind of ties everything together, I certainly would appreciate. So I'm all for that. Because I've struggled in the past with some of them where I'm flipping back and forth in order to try to have the context where it's a bit lacking. So if you're kind of making a judgment off of just what you see versus having some comfort that the town is either on a good trajectory or a bad trajectory, or are there warning lights that are flashing that we should be aware of, or everything's hunky dory?
Yeah. So if people have thoughts about what they would like to see go into the Blue Book and into the report, either the Warrant Committee report or the capital budget report, I think I've reached out to Barry about the capital budget report, and I'm hoping he gives us some license to uh, edit and kind of update some of what's in the capital budget report, or even whether or not we need two separate reports, whether they can somehow be merged, since a lot of the data are integrated in many ways.
I must admit, from that municipal meeting, Woody, I really loved that like one pager with like recognizing this is probably not the location because Blue Book's not going to handle color very well, but
Yep.
that kind of one page where you could see very quickly overall view of the town where there are mostly green lights. There are a couple, one red or one yellow, something where you can just easily understand positioning. And maybe
Yeah.
this isn't the right place for it, but I thought that was it doesn't need to be pages and pages. It was a nice kind of red, yellow, green light construct that I thought
Yeah.
was fabulous for efficiently communicating information.
Yeah, I like the red, yellow, green as well as some way of indicating to people
Yeah.
what areas they need to pay particular attention to.
Yeah, and the
Is that-
qualitative judgment. We're in a good place or we're in a bad place or we're okay, but rocks ahead. That context and that qualitative aspect I found missing in some of the prior reports.
Yep.
Would that be appropriate for the town meeting report? Like to generate some of that, because you could do slides in color, or would that just be too complicated?
Well, I think that it's certainly reasonable. I mean, Robin gives a slide presentation at town meeting,
Yeah, that's true.
and then the Warrant Committee has traditionally given a slide presentation at town meeting. Having that more integrated, if you will, with the Blue Book content would actually make a lot of sense, I think.
Okay.
So, so I mean, in the past couple of meetings where we've gotten some compliments, what we've done is we've said, let the Board of Selectmen give the longer term view, right? And Warren should focus on the budget because basically that's what you're voting on at town meeting. You're voting on this budget, and the selectmen's comments are trying to put it into a more long-term context. And I think we've been able to accomplish that the last two meetings. Chris and I have started already working on the budget presentation for town meeting and for the open hearing. And when we're in a position where it's good to share, we'll do that with you. But again, fewer words, more graphics, kind of depicting where we are as a town. Not only this year, but over the next 4 years, and the issues that we're facing that we need to focus on. So I personally, and you can decide what you want to do. I think it makes a lot of sense at town meeting for Warren to focus on the budget. And I think an executive summary of sorts so that people understand would be great.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I think that, and I don't know if this is doable with the budget for the Blue Book or not, but as Robin just mentioned, graphics, making graphics pop and making it colorful, I think would be helpful for people when they're scanning the Blue Book, in preparation for the town meeting.
Yeah,
The
I agree
challenge
with
is that it's printed in black and white, obviously, but still making meaningful graphics is possible still with a grayscale.
Yeah, I mean, can it be, you know, do we have to be in grayscale?
Well, we talked about making a few pages color, but it really changes the cost significantly. You know, if we did just part of the, you know, if, you know, like you know, books or magazines have like a section that's sort of more um, illustrative, and we talked about that, but it was a significant cost increase.
Do you have to, could you distribute and print just like color graphics, and then if anybody wanted to access the rest of the blue book, it would be follow the link or something, or does the bylaw, you have to mail out the whole thing?
Well, there are a number of residents in town that want the blue book in their hands at town meeting. You know, you could certainly, and I hate to say things that you may have already thought of and just aren't doable. But you know, my thought is you could create a version that's on the web that has color. So I would say for a majority of the town, and make it easy for people to come to town meeting and look at it on an iPad or something. So unfortunately, there's a whole lot of people that just want that piece of paper in their hands.
I do think we talked with Chris about the possibility of having the blue book printed in black and white, but a version of the blue book online that has the graphs and tables in color with relatively easy access to that. I think that's doable. I'm not sure we'll get there this year, but it seems like a reasonable goal for the next year or two. We are, knock on wood, but I think Chris's original quote on the printing is going to be substantially less than what it was last year. It's about a quarter of what we spent last year.
Wow.
So that would allow us a little bit of money to do other things. So it may be that we can print a few pages in color, or we'll just, I think we'll have to see what the value would be, what things don't need color to be adequately displayed and what don't.
Yeah, I think right now we're trying to figure out what information we even want to render into data illustrations, and then figure that out. So that would be a nice place. So that's our next step.
Any other questions or comments? All right, so the guidance letter group, who wants to kind of summarize where we are on things?
Oh, went
Mark,
out,
you wanna
right?
start?
It was sent, right?
Yeah, it was sent. Yeah, the guidance letter was distributed last Thursday.
Yeah.
So it's gone out. I've had comments from at least a few people, so people are aware of what we are recommending. I think so far the comments have not been profoundly negative. I think most people were expecting that the guidance would say pretty much what it did. I think now that letter is out, though, the group has been focusing on some other aspects of things, and maybe Gavin, you want to start and just talk about what else we've been working on?
Yeah, I mean, I think the guidance letter obviously gave the high level focus on level service and trying to do a constrained budget perhaps versus prior years. But some of the major themes discussed otherwise were also standardization. And so we've been working, well, we had a discussion with Chris and Mike, and I think the general feedback was, yes, they love the idea of standardization. It'll be a multi-year process. And kind of out of that came with the more we can template for people, the easier it probably will be if you just say, hey, report something or Word doc. So I took a stab at creating a couple slides, which I sent around, just sort of as a first pass. And so trying to create five-ish plus or minus, just to start having some predictability, but hopefully also ease for whoever's presenting of reduces uncertainty. Hey, everybody can just present the same things, but also give the context and the information so the warrant committee can better evaluate the performance as well as the budget requests. So that gets to standardization as well as one component was KPIs too, of at least starting the conversation for each of the departments on what are the appropriate KPIs in order to start measuring.
I think for those who didn't catch this, what we're talking about is having a more standard presentation of the department heads, board chairs to the warrant committee. Last year, I think a number of us felt, well, the last several years, I think a number of us have felt that the presentations were kind of all over the place. There was no consistency to the way people presented, what material they presented, kind of how they thought about what their departments were doing, how they justified their budgets, those kinds of things. So I think our sense was that we needed a more standardized, templated presentation with more information for us so that we could better assess what people were requesting, and particularly in a setting where we may be faced with having to cut programs, having to reduce budgets, those kinds of things, that we need the department heads to have a better sense of value that they're providing. And that didn't come across in a number of the presentations. I keep saying this, but the library was a notable exception. You know, the library has to report a lot of data to the state. So Bethany has just an enormous number of issues that she's got data on, like circulation of books and periodicals, people kind of using the library and using it for either for reading or for checking out material, those kinds of things. So she has a great ability to justify kind of different aspects of what she does. That was a lot less true, I think most of us felt, around the other departments. Some of it I think they assume is self-evident, and obviously some of it is self-evident, but it feels very much as if we're going to get to a state where the budget is a more coherent document, one step to getting there is to have the department heads start thinking somewhat differently about their presentations and therefore about kind of what they're doing. So I think as we discussed this with Michael and Chris, I think their sense was, you know, they were very enthusiastic about supporting us being more kind of coherent about the way the presentations work. Gavin's done a great job of creating some templates and slide templates for presentations for the department heads to kind of fill out. But I think realistically, it's some of the department heads are going to be very comfortable with thinking about key performance indicators and that sort of thing. Some of the department heads are not going to be very comfortable or not have a good grasp of what is required. So it's probably going to take 2 or 3 years to get to the point that the presentations are more standard and the data that we're receiving is a little more coherent. But I think Michael and Chris were very kind of supportive of the idea of kind of moving in that direction. Questions, comments?
No, Gavin and I were meeting earlier with Mark from Parks and Rec, and he said the meeting took place today and
Yes. Yeah,
there wasn't any major uproar. So
that's
that's
good to hear.
that's the inside information there.
Good. I do think it's going to be um, a project that's going to require it's going to require a lot of effort on Chris's part in particular, which he seems to be quite willing to take on. But I think we can be supportive and helpful to him in terms of our interactions with the departments that we're liaisons to and that sort of thing, helping people think about what it is, what information it is that we're interested in having them present, and also how we want to hear it. So I think it may take some more work on the part of the liaisons to make the process go. If we can get people to everybody to understand what key performance indicators are, and at least how they might think about measuring things, that would be a major accomplishment, I think, this year.
Woody, is it worth popping up on the screen just the 5 slides quickly so people can kind of see what we're talking about? So
I can try.
by the way, I'm going to apologize. It's been a long time since I built slides, so they're ugly. So they're not the prettiest in formatting. And no, leveraged a lot of work that Marty did. Marty did this beautiful multi-page word of, hey, where we'd love to get to long term. I think a lot of the effort was trying to filter down to what we thought would actually be able to work in the next year and not have heads explode. Because I think the comment that we got from both Chris and Michael were expect a multi-year process. This is not going to be something all done in once.
All right, Gavin, do you want to just talk through what you've got here?
Yeah, no, just a quick title slide talking overview and budget request, who submitted it, when it was submitted. Then the first slide was more just the laying the groundwork, and hopefully they do it once and they don't actually have to redo it every time. But it gives the context of like I kind of we talked with Parks and Rec. I had no idea the scope of what Parks and Rec actually covered. So it was incredibly informative to understand that hey, they're actually responsible for uh grounds maintenance on town and library, which I didn't realize was part of Parks and Rec, and it's the fields and then running the summer camps. There was a running the events like Dover Days. There was a much broader one, but hopefully everybody can kind of get a sense of who's department head, number of FTEs, and please, if people have feedback, this was a first pass. It's certainly a lot, but some sense of if there's a mission statement, something of what's the mission of Parks and Rec, or what's the mission of Concom, and then what falls in the responsibilities, and maybe the boxes are wrong sized, and some concept of organizational chart. Like I had no idea that there were basically 6 people working for Parks and Rec along with external vendors. And so it was a good conversation, but it's for like 1 page just so everybody's on the same page of what we're actually talking about for each department when they present. From there, I think long term the goal is to have KPI. So I put in a slide that will probably change in future years, but just to have a discussion where they can talk about how they think about department performance and how people who look at them should consider it. And so this is where bringing up the KPIs and then at least have a qualitative discussion for this year prior to having KPIs of how things are going, if things are going well or poorly, or their highlights or their concerns. Something just to provide a groundwork for the conversation before you actually get into the numbers. Because I think it's important for us not just to focus on the financial side, but also qualitatively what each department is doing, and are they doing it well, and are they doing it efficiently? So from there, going to a budget review, so we at least have the context when we look at 2027 of what happened in 2025 and how 2026 is going. So and to be fair, I don't know the breakdowns. It seems like every department kind of looks at things a little differently, but some sort of table where you've got the expenses, and if there are any revenues or fees or whatever, showing what 25 and 26 were, along with some commentary. Because I think sometimes in the numbers, I mean, it was just very useful going through of with Mark today of just how he thought about some of the buckets or what things kind of attract your attention. And for me, the big one was, hey, 85% of Parks and Rec is salaries. So, I mean, it's the 6 people. Everything else is actually kind of modest and doesn't really change much year to year. So that's kind of how to think about the business unit. But for each department having a review of 25 and 26, and then a discussion for 27. So before seeing the budget request, at least discussing, and this brings in questions that effectively were in the guidance letter. So talking about challenges and opportunities. Are there alternative revenue sources, opportunities for innovation? What needs aren't being addressed? What are the greatest challenges? And then from that, what therefore are the priorities? So as we think to the following year, hopefully that presentation and the discussion will align with everything that's been mentioned so far. And then coming to what 27 budget request is, with some sort of commentary, along with some discussion of if per the guidance letter of if there are contingency cuts or savings, where would they be?
Comments?
And Gavin, I think this looks great. I think the only suggestion for consideration is at the first part, if you can put that first page back up there. When you ask to describe the missions and responsibilities, would it make sense to, in describing that, to prioritize what those activities are or responsibilities, so that it kind of leads into when they think about metrics or key performance indicators, I assume those key performance indicators are going to be related to their top priorities, right? And then on the back end, when you're asking for fiscal 27 upcoming priorities, might you want to qualify it to indicate, are there any new priorities in fiscal 27, right? Because that may, whatever, if there are new priorities, does that mean the mission changes or has it expanded or that sort of thing? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Any other comments?
Are there any plans to have a template also for the numbers, them like itself? Because one of the challenges that we had last year is that some of the departments presented their numbers on a Word document, some on Excel spreadsheet, and some bullet points. And it was very difficult to understand, even like how the departments were organizing and presenting the budget. At least for me, it was very difficult to kind of like have a broader view of that. Are there any plans to include this kind of template?
I think Chris is gonna ask them to do that and is gonna be working with the department heads to kind of standardize the way they display their data, that they there's a common kind of budget software, but I think he feels as though having correct me if I'm wrong, Gavin or Marty or Kevin, but I think what he thought was having something in Excel from each of the department heads would actually be a doable effort.
Yeah, he was saying that, and I'm not necessarily familiar with all the systems, but everybody has to enter the stuff into a system called Vadar. And then from that he can potentially do extracts or put it into Excel in order to try to standardize. But no, it was a topic that he talked about, and it seems like he's interested in taking a lead on. I agree. I think it would be incredibly useful, and also to have it, as well as the converse of, it sounds like it was very, very tough to evaluate. For the slides I put in, I was assuming somebody would just copy and paste a table from Excel into it. But you're right. I think this would be where I would really hope that Michael and Chris would be good gatekeepers as they saw the presentations to say, hey, this is not consistent among all the other one versus the other ones. But I think this is where it's going to be very useful to be well aligned, not only with the liaisons, so hopefully the liaisons can help the departments and see as they fill it out if they can give them feedback, but then also Chris and Michael in order to also provide an extra level of standardization. I've generally found that the more you can prescribe something, generally the more consistent the output is. But if you go too intense on the prescribing, you create a whole nother set of issues. So I was trying to balance it by more providing space versus going too far, especially considering the variations that exist amongst many of the departments.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think throughout all these conversations, Gavin, it's worth mentioning that we're walking a fine line here. This is really not about getting a template or having people put a form together, particularly if that's how it gets viewed by the department heads. It's sort of a one and done, and then I can go back to what I was doing. Hopefully this gets internalized and is seen as a good and helpful management tool for them to measure their effectiveness and to think about the trade-offs between the limited resources, what their primary priorities are, and how they're going to allocate that, and have some quantitative measure or scorecard or scoreboard for them to use. So it's really for their benefit long term, and it'll help as a collateral benefit for the Warrant Committee and what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. And Simone, it was interesting to me to realize, to find out that everybody is already entering data in a common platform. So I can't imagine there isn't some way to just spit out a PDF or, like you said, export it to Excel. So I'm hoping that very act should create some consistency.
Other questions or comments?
Well, we talked about, not to jump, but we talked about the utility of having this sort of thinking, introduce this sort of thinking about performance and indications and measurements as also helpful for grants when people are applying for grants, because they'll already sort of started, they have half the language of the grant already written, as they do this sort of thing. That's helpful as well.
All right, great. So next, liaison reports. So it sounds like Kevin and Gavin met with Parks and Rec. Anything else you want to add to what you've told us?
It seems like he's pretty planned already. I mean, he was already showing us a draft budget. So I think he's probably I think he's relatively ahead of the game, or at least well prepared for the timeline provided. He did not seem stressed or concerned. Kevin, please jump in.
Yeah, no, I
Any
mean,
answers?
it's a pretty straightforward budget, and then but as far as we did have a KPI discussion, and I'd say they're maybe one of the easiest to measure. I mean, they take participation. They know how many people are participating in their various programs, how many people are attending like Dover Days and other things. So it's a pretty easy method to track, like, are they getting engagement, are our programs growing? And so yeah, he's on board with kind of the whole idea.
Did benchmarking come up at all, Kevin, in the conversations?
Not when I was there.
Because I know Simone and I were the two that dealt with the Parks Department last year, and you probably recall, Simone, we were trying to get a sense as he went through all of those things Kevin just described. How does that compare to your peers, whoever those peers are? And I'm not sure there was a good sense of
Yeah.
It's
The
all-
only benchmarking that kind of came up was when we started talking about fees and benchmarking fees against other towns for some of the offerings.
Mhm.
Like the split, the 80-20 split between the
Yeah,
program provider and then what Parks and Rec keeps. That's in their like program revenues and the revolving account.
yeah.
They want to, so no, so that benchmarking other towns didn't really come up. But it's not a bad, bad thought. But he did mention that they're looking into some kind of a software, right, or some kind of a system to track who's coming in and out of the new community center, like just, like a person count or something. I think there's like privacy laws or something, so I don't know. Like something's going to measure like shadows, or there can't be facial recognition or something. But anyway, I thought that would be a cool metric to know, like what's the usage of and the foot traffic through the community center would be interesting to watch.
Does that include the UPS delivery guy and the Amazon van?
Yeah, even that might be high traffic, right? But so no, good meeting, I thought, Gavin. But neither of the guys from the commission, the committee over there came, but we'll meet them. I mean, we'll go to one of their meetings or something, Gavin.
Yeah, they're having their next meeting on Monday. So
Yeah.
Did they talk any about uh programs or capital that they're uh uh working or thinking about? I mean, I don't know what they've got in the capital budget right now, but
the only capital they mentioned that's in the capital budget is the pickleball courts, for redoing the pickleball courts at Carroll. But we asked about sort of facilities, whatever. He's sort of like the fields are getting more worn, and the primary reason is drought over the summer because they can't irrigate in the middle of when the drought indicator goes to a certain level. But in general, it didn't seem like there was any meaningful amount of deferred maintenance, and it was more discretionary incremental capital to make greater use of the Carroll or improve that area where the pickleball courts are for Carroll.
the original proposal had been a 3-component uh, initiative. They were going to redo the playground, which was the step one, and I believe that is funded, right, and is supposed to take place. Then they were going to do the parking lot, which has, despite the fact that the drought is frequently almost impassable due to potholes, and resurface the tennis courts, and then they were going to create new pickleball courts. I think they have now the use of the basketball court for the pickleball courts seems to have been quite successful. But when I'm there playing tennis, it's common for people to be playing pickleball, and they seem pretty happy with the court. So I think that is that was originally going to be a $800,000 capital project to create the new pickleball courts. So that's been a huge substantial savings.
Yeah, it sounds like it's going to be a more modest request.
Yeah,
Of just improving that area where the pickleball courts are, and then he said you also have to regrade and re-improve the parking area because right now it's angled and shoves all the water on the pickleball courts. So you're going to have improvement
Maybe
there, which will
that's
hopefully.
part of the
yeah. I think it's resurfacing it, cutting down maybe a lot of the brush and trees around it, and maybe putting up a better fence than the plastic thing that they got up there right now, or yeah. But no, not like new pickleball courts or anything like that.
not a big initiative. Great.
Yeah.
So it doesn't sound like there's a large capital request from them, and it doesn't sound like there's a large amount of deferred maintenance or clearly it seems like they'd like to have nicer fields and they could probably use some work, but it's also one of those things that it seems to be working right now.
Yeah, great.
Will
Okay.
Mark be presenting the community center inside the Parks and Recs or the Parks and Recs inside of community center?
I think he's gonna present them both, but they'll be kind of separate presentations.
And are you both also following on the community center aspect of it? Or who's the liaison for that? Who are the liaison for that?
Well, I don't know, is that like a separate thing? I mean,
No,
he said the building department maintains the community center.
Yeah, but he has been appointed as the director of the community center.
Yeah.
And supposed to
Believe he's
oversee-
responsible for the budget,
Yeah,
the operating budget, yeah.
You're mixing apples and oranges. The community center budget is part of the town. It's a town building. It's owned by the town.
Yeah,
Well, the town is responsible for that. Mark is responsible for programming,
yeah,
not for the community as a whole. But he's responsible for the programming from a park and rec perspective. Janet does the programming for the COA.
mhm,
And there's a committee that looks at all the programming and how making sure that it's fair allocation for residents of the town who want to use the community center.
No, I
So there
understand that.
isn't- Right. So, you keep asking about, is he responsible for the community center? But the community center as a whole isn't one budget. That's what I'm trying to get to you. It goes into different buckets. The facilities are in the town's bucket.
Mhm.
Mark is responsible for park and rec programming. Janet, who's in the community center, is responsible for COA.
Mhm.
So all of that makes up the community center budget, but it's not all Mark's responsibility.
I understood.
Those people don't report to him. So
Yeah.
so I just want to make sure, so I don't understand what you mean when you're.
I mean by that, like
Who's
if
responsible
people,
for the community
yeah,
center budget?
like for example, if we want, like we made a reservation to use a room there for the warrant committee, so we don't pay a fee for that. But residents who want to pay to rent a space there, I'm assuming that Mark would be responsible for this revenue income, and eventually he would be managing these decisions. So I'm just curious to see if we're gonna be able to see this from Mark, or it will be someone else that will tell us how the community center has been used, the activities that like I think Gavin was mentioned, or Kevin, the software that they are planning to track people like using the facilities. I'm curious about the utilization of the facilities and how it's generating revenues for the town.
Right, so I believe the revenues are in, you can't mix and match things in
Mhm.
governmental accounting.
Yeah.
So I am pretty certain we did a revolving fund for the revenues, so that revolving fund would be accounted for by the town accountant. So it could be presented by Mark, but at the end of the day, you can only keep whatever. If the revolving fund was 10,000, you could only keep 10,000 in that fund, and the rest gets closed out to free cash.
Mhm.
So if you're looking for a report, Mark would be, I'm assuming, presenting the report.
Mhm.
But the town accountant would be the one collecting or booking the revenue for it.
Yeah, and that's fine. I'm more curious about like who's going to be presenting what is happening at the community center.
It sounds like there's three centers from, if I understand what you said, Robin. There's the Parks and Recreation Department that's responsible for the programming related to Parks and Recreation within the building, right? And then
Right.
there's the COA, and they're responsible for what goes on. But the building itself is part of the town's physical plant. And is that
Correct.
part of Public Works, or who is it that understands the overall cost of maintenance and repairs and all those things? Would that be Kevin McCabe's group?
No,
No.
it's facilities. So the town has a facilities group. So
And where do they
Carl
fall?
Warnick I mean, it's a little bit cumbersome the way the budgets are designed, but this is where the costs fall.
Yeah, but I mean, if someone at some point, after the first year or 2 years or whatever, wants to evaluate what has this community center cost versus direct revenues or any intangible type benefits to the town, it sounds like you'd have to draw it from at least 3 sources, if not more, right?
Yeah.
It's a little awkward, too, isn't it, Robin? Because Carl's not going to address the programs. Or
No, right, but you understand it's not its own cost center or department.
right,
It's just like within the townhouse, you have all the land use departments, their costs are in the land use department costs, like the Board of Health, right? So they have their own budget, but they're utilizing the townhouse. So they're different departments responsible for different, and I think what Simone's getting at, I'm probably putting words in her mind, in her mouth, but the utilization of the community center and the cost of that utilization. So, the community center is a success if has people in there all the time. And so Mark being able to look at who's coming and going gives us a sense. And then unfortunately, the the fixed costs to run the building are in the town's budget, right? And then the revenues are in each of these different departments.
Yeah.
So I mean, we would have the information, you would just need to pull it from a whole lot of other sources.
Yeah, my question is related also to the fact that, we invested $26 million on the community center and now it's up and running. I think that the community would be interested to understand what is happening there and to see that the money was well invested and people are actually, like all kinds of people are accessing the community center. Because I remember last year when we were discussing that, you explained that when Mark was appointed to be taking care of the community center, that one of the key objectives was to make sure that it wouldn't be about parks and recreations or council of aging, but it would be about the community center, like as a whole, as one big building where Dover residents could have access and engage in different activities and so forth. So I would expect that the community want to see the result of this movement, even if it comes from 3 different buckets. I think that community will be very much interested in understanding the utilization, that if residents are happy with what they are getting there, if there are areas that we can improve and leverage the infrastructure that we have there to get something more interesting happening. And to
Right,
this
but
point,
but what you're getting at then isn't financial. What you're getting at is
Yeah.
the utilization rate of
Yeah.
the community center.
Yeah.
Well, I guess in listening to this and the prior discussion about KPIs, I would assume one measure or one KPI of the benefit of that center is the town already had a council on aging and a parks and recreation department, right? And there's certain activities of each of those groups that was going on before the community center, but there's other additional activities as well as expanded volume or capacity, right? And so it would be really interesting to see. Well, unfortunate part is there's probably no baseline, but they should be able to come up with that, to look at what has been the incremental benefit in terms of either expanded existing programs or new programs that were not able to be offered. And, what has been that overall participation that I think was the primary objective of building
What
that.
about, wasn't there a community center like committee?
Dick
There
was
was
actually
many.
the chair.
What's that?
There
Dick
were
was-
many.
Dick was the chair.
I
Oh,
was the chair of the building committee.
Oh, all
Oh,
right, the other
oh,
guy.
the building committee. No, like Ruth, was it Ruth Townsend or
Yeah,
she's
Yeah,
trying to put together a Friends of the Community Center.
But these are different things. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
the focus, you know, certainly Mark, Mark, we can talk to Mark and he will certainly provide, you walk into that community center any time of the day and there are people there. So he's expanded programming in the sense that every Wednesday when it's early release day, he has an open gym and every kid wants to be in the community center utilizing the open gym. I was there on a random Friday afternoon. One of the new programs they have is a drop-in arts and crafts after school. Again, there were probably 10 kids there with moms, all different ages. So those are new types of programs that they've been able to provide. There's also an increased demand in the community for utilizing the space. There are groups that want to run their book clubs there. So he can certainly provide an overview of the programs that are happening in the community center and how it's different from what the community center looked like before.
Yeah.
He's gonna, after a year of it being open, he will get a sense of, well, not him, because it's a group that's running it, and they're trying to figure things out right now.
Right, but but there's reservation software. Like we're going to be able to see who, like
Right,
he
exactly.
knows what groups are renting the room, so it
Right.
shouldn't be too hard. He mentioned somebody did a movie premiere in the
Right.
in the big
Right.
room. That's kind of cool. So anyway,
Somebody that works for Marvel that lives in town, I guess.
that's right. That's exactly right. So um, I don't know, Woody. I make a motion to move on to a different topic.
That's
I'm
fine.
sorry.
I was agree with you. So, Mish,
Okay.
do you want to just talk about your meeting with the Chief Vinci? You're muted.
Sorry. Yeah, so we met with Chief Vinci last Thursday, the day the guidance letter went out. Woody, thank you for pinch hitting for Marty. Marty, thanks for preparing. Marty had sent over a document that sort of articulated sort of evaluating effectiveness of small police departments. And so we used that as sort of context for the conversation. We didn't hand him the document, but it was a good sort of touchstone for us. And so we basically reviewed the focus of the, this year, how we're looking at measurable outcomes and performance indicators. And they'd just gotten the guidance letter. So Woody gave them some information on that. And then we just reviewed overall his budget strategy, his biggest expense drivers, and then how he's looking to grow this next year specifically. And we spent some time talking about the different strategies. He's definitely focused on grants, and that's great. And the biggest thing is the request he's working on a request for capital for a new police car, not a replacement, but a new car. He's looking at pricing out electric or hybrid options and how they can fund the infrastructure needed through a grant using Westwood as a model. And so there's other things, I don't know if you want to go into all the detail, but there's other things they're looking into, but that's sort of the big one for this year. And he's looking at some staffing changes and additions and
Yeah, he did talk a little bit about the if the new dispatch program is implemented in this coming year, that will obviously mean that he'll no longer have a patrolman sitting at the desk. So more people will be out patrolling, but I think he is a little worried about kind of general resident acceptance of the fact that they'll walk into the police station and no one will be there. So he did talk about the possibility of trying to have an administrative position that would be someone who could sit at the desk and would allow him to change the description of his second in command. That was the one other kind of major kind of budgetary thing that seemed potential. But
Right.
he I think he seemed comfortable with the way the budget was gonna the guidance letter was gonna impact him.
Mhm.
Then Sarah's not here, but there was a Dover School Committee meeting last night, and I listened in because Dawn was presenting the first draft of the Dover school budget. And I thought it'd just be worth mentioning that I think her current draft, she usually her first version is usually high, and then she kind of adjusts downward in subsequent versions. I think this first version has an increase of about 7% over prior years. That includes $400,000 that she's got in there to account for the new teacher's contract that's being negotiated.
Well, I was on that call too. I dialed in. I thought it was 5.1%.
Is that what it was?
I thought
Yeah.
it was 5.1, and she said it's probably, I like doing the high water mark exactly as you said. She said if you think it's going to be 2.5, you're wildly off. So I
I'm
think
sorry, you're correct. I was just reading my notes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it sounds like maybe
She's
5.1
hoping to
probably the
come
high
in.
water mark, but it doesn't sound like it's going to get down to 2.5.
No.
So yeah, I was curious your take, Woody, on is that what you think is going to be normal across most of the departments, kind of that, because you sort of like, I read the Warrant Committee letter, we're going to give them level service is what we're going to give them. So
Uh, yeah, I would say that. Well, no, I think the schools kind of see themselves as different from the rest of the town in many
Okay.
ways, and in some kind of important ways, they are different from the rest of the town. They
Yeah.
also have a major kind of wild card in terms of the
Contract.
contract. She did for the she didn't talk about this so much last night, but the state is mandating that the uh, special ed budget be accounted for differently. In the past, all of Dover's special education costs have been on the Dover budget, even if the students were actually at the middle school or the high school. And the state is going to demand that no longer be true, that it actually show up on the regional school budget when the students are have aged out of the elementary school. So it's not going to change the actual costs, but it will change the way the two budgets look somewhat. And obviously it depends a lot on what out of district costs are at the, and the age of the students who are requiring out of district placements. So that's just, it's not going to affect the bottom line in the town's budget, but it will affect the way the school budgets look to us as we're going through things.
I'm glad you understood that. I must admit I was getting a little confused.
Yeah, it's pretty. Dawn doesn't always explain it in all that coherent a way, and although I'm convinced she understands this stuff incredibly well, but I've spent enough time on it now. I've heard it 2 or 3 times, so I think I'm correct about this. But it does sound as though they're continuing to make progress, keeping more kids in district for their services as they develop more programs kind of locally. And that's been of help. And they did talk some about a new initiative around English language programs that the reading and writing programs at the school are going to require may be changed in the way they actually approach things, and that may end up requiring some new expenses, but that may not make it into the 27 budget. It may be 28. Otherwise, it sounded as though they're not going to get to 2.5%, but they're not going to be as far above it as you might fear. But that's for Dover again, and that's moving some of what previously was on their budget in terms of special ed costs, circuit breaker costs, to the regional school. So it may be that the regional school doesn't look quite as good as a consequence of that.
But that's just a reallocation of costs, Woody, right? It has no impact.
Just a reallocation. It's not, it doesn't actually affect the bottom line in any way.
On the issue of the state, though, given everything that's happening, was there any indication that there could be a disruption in the reimbursement by the state or reduction?
I've asked Dawn about this 2 or 3 times, and what they're hearing from the state is that they don't anticipate a problem with circuit breaker reimbursement. I didn't think this was true, but Dawn says the circuit breaker reimbursement comes out of the millionaire's tax. So, and
Everything seems to come out of that millionaire's tax.
Yes. So the state is doing so well with that right now that they feel confident they're going to be able to fulfill the circuit breaker obligations. Remember again that Dover handles this differently than most towns, in the sense that we don't account for the circuit breaker reimbursement as revenue until it actually appears.
Except last year, remember?
Except last year, less portion of it last year. But I think the intention is this year to go back to the regular way to account for things.
That's good.
So this is different than the way Sherburne and a number of other towns do it, but eventually the money does come back. It is reflected in free cash. So I
think the scary thing for me is that you look back in history and that level of reimbursements fluctuated dramatically. So the current levels of 75% are on the higher end of the historical number. They have been meaningfully lower. And so if the state ever does go into a rough patch, they certainly seem to have shown a willingness to cut it. But yeah, no, it seems like there's confidence that they'll at least be there, especially as long as all the millionaires stay here and don't leave. So thank your local millionaire for the circuit breaker revenue, because it certainly is filling a big hole otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, I do think this is why Dover accounts for it the way it does, is because there was historical fluctuation in the reimbursement.
Yeah,
it feels like it's been relatively stable recently, and the expectation is, I think, on part of most towns, is that this is going to continue. It's hard not to get nervous as the Federal Department of Education disappears and a bunch of other things occur. But at least at this point, the state is giving every indication that they're going to fulfill their obligation this year.
Yeah, no, I went back in history just in case people were wondering. The last time it really got cut was during the 2008 recession, when it went from 75% down to 42%.
Yeah.
And stayed in the low 40s for 2 years in 2009 and 10 before it gradually ramped back up to 70, in the 70 range.
Yep.
So the states used it before as a funding source, which is the scary thing. Long term, in the short term, I think it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, as long as she uses that conservative accounting or budget process, we're insulated somewhat from that variability. It's just
Right.
last year, for some reason, we didn't follow that methodology, so we're at risk for this particular reimbursement.
Right. Ultimately, it would affect our free cash, but at least in the way we budget for it, would look we'd be okay. All right. I think that was the last thing I wanted to go through. So I know that Ken Burns has already started, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Marty, a second.
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 All right, great. Gavin. Mish,
Yes.
Dick,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
Marty,
Yes.
Simone,
Yes.
and Gavin.
Yes.
I'm definitely a yes. All right, I have no meeting next week, but I have actually scheduled a meeting for the first week in December. I think it's December 3rd. And at that point, we'll continue to do liaison reports primarily. Okay, enjoy the film.
Yes. Have a great
Thanks.
Thanksgiving, everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks. Have a good
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.